actually
that goes
gives them the care.
to see if, say, there's a polyp or a fibroid or a mass.
Improve patient outcomes.
We are doing great work to make Arkansas the safest place to have a delivery.
Welcome to AFMC TV. I'm Robin Ledbetter. Thank you for joining us. Today I have with me Dr. Chad Rodgers. He's the Chief Medical Officer here at AFMC, and we are talking about back to school.
Back to school.
So, busy time for families, but from a healthcare perspective, why is it such an important time of the year to check in on just the child's health and well-being?
Right. So, I think it's sort of the punctuation of the school year that kind of reminds people, especially getting in and, getting ready for sports, and then also if they need to take medications at school, to kind of get back and do that kind of annual visit. When, people are like, why do I need to go to the doctor every year? Well, a whole lot changes in a child's life that you don't see from day to day. And so it's a good time to get into the office and just, see what your child's height and weight are, and to check their blood pressure and to make sure they're up to date on their scripts. And there's a lot of things that sometimes occur through the year that kids need, where it's just important that they've had a physical. And so by having that in place, if there's a referral needed or something that comes up through the year, there's a lot of a whole lot of things. We do a lot of screenings at those visits that people kind of be like, why do we gotta do all this? But they're all kind of in place there to kind of catch things before they get bad. So that's sort of the goal of the checkup, is sort of just to identify any problems. And most kids are healthy, and which is great. But if you can identify something earlier, it's easier to address than to something that gets further down the road.
So we often think about it simply as a checking the box.
Yeah.
That back to school physical.
Right.
What can families and healthcare providers do to make that visit more meaningful?
Yeah, I think that kind of preparing for the visit, kind of thinking about the things like, when they wake up at night and they complain about their leg aching, or, maybe they're not dry yet. And there's nothing that you want to take off from work and take your kid into the doctor for, but there's usually kind of a list of things that you have that you want to talk to the doctor. It's a really good time to do that. But there's also a good time for kids to think about things that they're worried about, or maybe they have questions about their body, or that, we sort of know our own body, but we don't know if something is abnormal or not. And for teens, I think it's really important to start to talk to them about what are the things that they want to talk about while they're at the doctor, or there are some things that are concerning them. And also, not just to kind of get them thinking about it, but help give them the words to talk about things. Because a lot of times teenagers are struggling, to sort of, I'm kind of surprised how many times I ask, have you felt short of breath? And they're like, what does that mean? It's like, that's very common to me. But when they're playing sports or they're doing other activities, it's kind of an important thing to know. And that they realize that maybe they are a little more short of breath than the other players on the team, or when they're climbing up the stairs, they have to stop. And so these are kind of important things to kind of talk about beforehand, so that they're kind of thinking about it, and that it doesn't come up as they're walking out the door.
So let's talk about immunizations, vision, hearing, all of those screenings.
Mm-hmm.
Should parents be thinking about that dental care, medication, sports participation, and other preventive care?
Yeah, so it's kind of to get everything kind of in line. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things we most commonly see is that people fail a vision or hearing screen and need a referral. And a lot of times those end up being normal, but it's a good time to kind of to check and see. But I think it's kind of a time to kind of think about the medications, think about what your child's going to need, what are those forms that they're going to need, and kind of get ready for the school year.
And has the immunization requirements changed for the state?
Right. The immunizations requirements have not changed for the state. There's actually a lot of confusion right now. So I'm a pediatrician, and so I belong to the American Academy of Pediatrics, and pediatricians around the country have worked for a long time on a vaccine schedule. There's been a lot that's kind of come up in the news where some other alternatives or maybe some differences in the vaccine schedules have been proposed or kind of promoted. And with pediatricians, we feel like sticking to the traditional schedule meets the needs of most American children, and especially children in Arkansas. So it's important to know the vaccine schedule has not changed for the most part. The vaccines are still available through your pediatrician and through your health departments, and the vaccinations are still very important, and they save lives.
So for children who have asthma, diabetes, allergies, ADHD, other chronic conditions, what should families and healthcare providers be doing before the school school year starts to make sure that everyone's prepared.
Right. It's a good time. A lot of times people have gone off their ADHD meds over the summer. Sometimes they have not had a lot of trouble with their asthma over the summer because that has been spring and fall. So they may need refills on medicines. The other thing is that the school nurse is your friend, and she is or he is there to kind of help make sure your kids can stay in school. But they need sort of instructions, if your child is taking medication, and especially something like diabetes where their sugar may get low, or they may need insulin at school, or there may be interventions that need to occur if your child has seizures, what are the things that they should do. So kind of going ahead and having those plans in place so the school nurse knows what the doctor has planned, and then also what the family, wants and knows. But so that while the child is at school, those healthcare needs are met, so they can stay in school and not have to come home because they've gotten sick from their asthma because they have been taking their asthma medicines. But also, helping build that communication not only with the nurse to the nurse, but the nurse back to the doctor. So there's a lot of times it's a good time if your child is having some health issues that are occurring at school during their waking hours. I mean, if your kid is coughing a lot during classroom, and it's a good way to communicate back to the school nurse, to just communicate back to the family, to communicate back to the provider that's taking care, so that we can address those healthcare issues.
So let's talk mental and emotional health. So what should parents be watching for as their kids transition back?
Yeah.
For the structure, the expectations of a new school year.
The dreaded back to school. It's always a challenge. I mean, I think the first day of getting up and getting ready and out the door is always a challenge. I mean, sometimes with the summer, our sleep schedule has been off and we've been staying up late, or maybe not going to bed as early as we need to. Things have been a little bit more relaxed. So that can be stressful for parents, but it's also stressful for children. So it's important that we support our kids and make it a positive experience and kind of plan and prepare. Maybe moving their sleep schedule back up a little earlier, a couple of days before school, so we can kind of get up and get early. But a lot of kids are going to complain about school. But school is the most important thing for kids to be doing. Learning is so important in that period of life. It's like you and I have to go to work. They sort of have to go to school. So, finding it, if they're having some school dread or they're having some concerns, kind of really talking about that. And again, giving kids words to talk about, to maybe naming emotions and talking about things, maybe reassuring that it's not that everybody's nervous on the first day of school. And that when they get in and they get to settle with their teacher, they're going to feel better and that this is going to get better. And most kids, the school dread is going to improve. But there's some kids who kind of continue to have trouble through the school year. And so I think, the first couple weeks of school, you can anticipate a little bit of exhaustion, a little bit of complaining, but usually after a couple weeks, most kids are settled in. So if they're still complaining after a couple weeks, then I would probably get a little bit more concerned.
So what about teenagers?
So what about teenagers?
What do we wish parents and other adults understood about the pressures teens are experiencing? It is a different day and age now.
Well, I think as adults that we often minimize the stress that your teenagers experience because we have been through it and we survived, and that's the reality is that most people survive the stress of teenagerdom, but they need supporting adults in their life to help them with that stress and to acknowledge and not to minimize the stress, because it's important for teenagers to learn to manage what stress they have at that point. So as they go into adulthood, as we all know things do get more stressful, they can manage that stress as they get older. So it's a good time. I think communication is really important. Sometimes teens don't want to communicate, but again, giving them their space, but also taking opportunities to talk about things, creating a safe environment with your teenager that they're not going to get in trouble. I think that's that they can come to you, they can talk to you about anything, and that you're there to help them and create that kind of safe space. But if they're going through something that they can come to you. The other thing is, it always helps to have another adult in their life, whether that's an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent or a youth pastor or the teacher, just some other adult in their life that they can talk to. Because some kids don't want to worry their parents with stuff, so they actually won't. Because especially if mom is really stressed and, they may take on that stress, but they also don't want to bother her with what's going on at school. So it always helps to have another adult that they can help talk to, that can help them kind of get some resolution in that.
So screens, social media play such a huge role in that age demographic.
Yeah.
What conversations should parents and healthcare providers be having about technology and sleep, mental health?
So definitely the recommendations on screen time is changing. We're having more and more research to show the impact of too much screen time and what the effects it can help on mental health. In a lot of ways, there's a lot of positives. I mean, kids are going to spend some time on screens every day. It's kind of knowing what content they're looking at. Is it good quality content? How much time are they spending? How it's affecting them? Is it a learning type deal, or is it just for entertainment? But it's real important for parents to be real involved in what their kids are looking at online, and to talk about what they're seeing online, and maybe even spending a long time online together and directing them to appropriate sites and stuff like that. We're working on kind of putting more kind of safeguards on social media. We do know that it has a pretty profound effect on anxiety and depression, especially with body image and other issues. Teenagers feel like everybody else is having the best life and they're living this miserable life, but they're kind of talking them through that's just a small segment of life that they're seeing. The AAP has the American Academy of Pediatrics has a really good resources to develop a family media plan. It's actually very easy to do. I've gone online and do it. You do it for every member of the family, including the adults, not just the kids, because we as adults also need to regulate our screen time. Creating screen time free zones, encouraging your kids to turn off the phone or the screen time an hour or two before bedtime, really putting some structure in place around where phones are allowed. They're not allowed at the kitchen table, but maybe they're allowed to, hang out in the living room for an hour and look at their phone. So really kind of trying to put some safeguards around that to kind of promote kind of healthy use of social media.
And helpful that it helps the parents too.
Yes, it does help the parents. We actually need to do the work as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So are there opportunities for healthcare providers to use this back to school season to identify needs that might otherwise go unnoticed?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things in place, and it's often the things that people get kind of annoyed with, all the pre-screeners and stuff like that. But those screens are designed to be put in place to identify things like anxiety and depression. A lot of times those go sort of unrecognized, especially if a lot of the people in the family are dealing with anxiety and it's sort of the norm, but it might be an opportunity to highlight that and talk about that and maybe to get the family referred to some resources. The other thing is to screen for other things like food insecurity, housing insecurity, social determinants. So what does the family need to be? It's hard to go to school and learn if you're hungry. It's hard to go to school if you have a big hole in the roof of your house and it's cold at night and you can't sleep. So there's a lot of opportunities to do those screens, and even though we get kind of tired of them, they're really helpful to letting your healthcare provider know, but also maybe they can help connect you with those resources to address those issues.
And so before we go, for the parents watching
Yes.
that may feel overwhelmed by everything,
Yeah.
not only that they've heard today, but just knowing that it's back to school time, what is the short list? What are a few things that you would tell them to prioritize?
Yeah, I think about the things that are bothering you the most. Like, is it the leg pain? Is that bothering you? This is a good time to talk about it. Make sure you make a list and know that, if they have asthma or if they have diabetes and what meds they're on so that you can get those refilled. And then I think, just having talked about, there's a lot of information about vaccines out there, spending a little time looking to see if your child is due for vaccines so that you can talk with the healthcare provider, but you can also talk with your kids about the importance of vaccines and trying to go and find out what good resources there are to just be informed. I think that's the big push, is to make sure that people are kind of informed of the importance of vaccines, but to also know the safety of vaccines. And that's one of the big reasons that we have that so many kids have to get a physical before they go back to school so that we can protect all of our kids.
Well, Dr. Rodgers, thank you so much for being here today, and happy back to school.
Happy back to school.
The time has come.
It's going to be early.
Well, that's it for this episode of AFMC TV. Have a great day. Thanks for watching.